What a privilege to be here. Pakistan has a problem, and we all know it. There are a very large number of people, fifth largest country in the world, 251 million people and rising. I'd like to give you some data. You live in Australia, you live in a very lucky country. We spend 10.5% of our GDP on health. Government, through taxation, spends 5,300, and individuals from our wallet, we spend 1,700 through insurance and out-of-pocket. And that delivers us life expectancy of nearly 84 years. As you'll see, it's just good value for money. Pakistan, 3% of GDP. $12 per person from government taxation, and $26 from the individual. And so you achieve life expectancy of 67 years. By comparison, the United States spends 17% of its GDP on health, the individual paying over $5,000 and government paying over $6,500. But they achieve life expectancy of 79 years. We got there 30 years ago. So you live in a very lucky country in Australia. Very lucky. Your kids are in the best place because they will be looked after in health. Now, this is my experience of Pakistan. I have been there many times, 6, 7 times, taken teams there. And this is my experience of patients waiting outside the hospital. Without care, they would die. I'm always transported around very carefully. The best protection is to be in the Sindh Institute of Urology and Transplant Plus. I think the machine gun is extra. I'm not sure it's providing me much protection. But every human being has the right to access health care, irrespective of caste, of colour, and religious belief. And it should be free with dignity. Adib Rizvi's driving force at SIUT. And that is why I keep going back there to help him with that agenda. And I see people in end-stage kidney disease. This man will need to be treated before the day is out, or he will die. And I have been teaching in Australia. We go out to SIUT and we teach for a week. And we all have a great time. And we try and impart knowledge that is very hard to get if you live only in the hospital in Pakistan. Fertilizing ideas from outside, techniques from outside is important. And we have been on walks and marches in Karachi to support organ donation. And we have worked in the operating theatres. You could not tell whether that theatre was in Australia or in Karachi. It's in Karachi. It's a remarkable achievement. But I have some warnings for you. This top left symposium on organ donation in Karachi, 1992. this press meeting, 1996, that's a while ago. And here the Organ Transplant Act passed in 2009. The setting is there, the enthusiasm is there, but transplant is not there. These are two deceased donors with their details given courtesy of their relatives. I was at the International Transplantation Society Congress in Istanbul last week, and a very brave and impressive reporter from Karachi spoke, Sophie Abraham. She reports there have been 5 deceased organ donors in Pakistan. Ever. There is work to do. So Pakistan is important for many of the right reasons. SIUT is one of the largest living donor kidney transplant programs in the world. One of the largest. Certainly one of the most ethical. But there are other problems. This is where Pakistan is on the world stage. You have much to do to increase transplantation, to save more lives in Pakistan. So let me change the story a little and ask, who can afford to buy a kidney and the services needed for a transplant? And the answer is certainly the top 1% and possibly the top 5% of the world. So you need about 100 transplants per annum per million population. So if we want to achieve that, there are 8,000 people of the 8 billion in the world in the super wealthy who will need a transplant in 2024. And there are 40,000 of the world's rich, the top 5%. So that's 50,000 people who can afford to buy a transplant. And they're knocking on the door of every transplant program in the world, including in Pakistan. Only 20% are likely to get a transplant. So the pressure on transplant programs and doctors to use the poor as organ donors is intense. In Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, in Turkey, in Egypt, in South America. And Pakistan has many rich people who can afford to achieve a transplant when most can't. So efforts like the ones that you are putting forward are critical to make a difference to the country. I'm having trouble moving this on. So in Australia, we do about 1,000 transplants a year. We have about 13,500 people with a transplant, and we have another 15,500 on dialysis. And about just under 40% of those have diabetes as they cause a kidney failure. So the talk before is so important to understand that diabetes is the problem. So we have been doing at Westmead, not very far from here, My unit was responsible for kidney failure treatment right in this room. We do kidney and pancreas transplants to treat both diabetes and kidney failure. And we can have successful transplants which reverse both diabetes and kidney failure. He wasn't allowed to eat that before he had his transplant. But that's a big organs transplant, and ideally, we would just like to transplant the islets. And we can separate those islets out, and now they're very small and you can inject them. And so the goal for us is to turn the treatment of diabetes into an injection once, not 3 times a day. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk. How successful is kidney pancreas transplant? The answer is very successful now. And we at Westmead have been very lucky. We started in 1989, and we've had about 90% success rate up to about 15 years. We have people at 25 years after a kidney pancreas transplant. And you have to put that in context because they would have got diabetes maybe in their 20s. They would have got kidney failure in their late 30s. We would transplant them in their 40s, and now they're alive at 65. The magic is seeing somebody who didn't expect to be alive at 65 with their grandchildren.
Thank you very much. Here's one question from Chapman. Are there any opportunities for nephrology trainees, specialists from Pakistan who have 6 to 12 months post-fellow or experience in transplant in Australia, for example, St. Vincent's, etc., or Westmead Hospital?
Yeah, so training in Australia is difficult to achieve and is not easy from overseas. We used to be able to bring many people in from overseas, and at Westmead we've trained people from all over the world, including the United Kingdom, but certainly from the Indian subcontinent and from Asia. This is now not so easy as it was, unfortunately, and what we can provide is courses. We can provide teaching in the hospital, but we cannot provide hands-on care for overseas graduates unless they fully qualify in Australia. And so that is the slight limitation. I think what we have focused on Westmead is reaching out to hospitals that are looking to change their training within the hospital. And so we can ask them, what do they need most? Do they need a surgeon? Do they need the pathology? Do they need the transplant follow-up? What is it that they need most? And then we go and spend a concentrated period of time to focus for people who work in the hospital on the needs that they have in that hospital. So it's not so easy as it was, but we can adapt and we can still make an impact.
Thank you very much.